Hello, everyone. Today, I'm very happy to have a distinguished civil engineer with us. More importantly, he's my friend from high school. I think it's a higher qualification. So I'm very happy we have Udai Pratap Singh with us. Uh, he is indeed a distinguished civil engineer and environmental expert. Let's listen to him. Over to you, Uday.
All right. Thank you, Subodh. It's a pleasure and really appreciate this opportunity. Uh, it's always nice to be speaking to an old classmate and talking about all the things I've been involved in. All the things that are near and dear to my heart. But today I'm going to be talking about global pollution, sustainable infrastructure, climate change. These are big issues, and so we will just touch a little bit on each one of those and update people on what's happening, possibly going to the past, some background, and that should be enough material for people to think about.
Okay.
So, that's the nutshell.
Okay, let's do
Um,
it. Let's do it.
Okay, so I think all of us know that pollution is a real problem, on Earth. The It's an ultimate killer. Uh, the Journal of American College of Cardiology in June this year published an article, and I read it briefly, and it said pollution is deadlier than war, terrorism, and major diseases. So, it basically said that it's a greater health threat than the threat of war, terrorism, malaria, HIV, tuberculosis, drugs, alcohol combined. And that it is really startling. Um, Basically, another report said that toxic air, contaminated soil, contaminated water, they are killing more than 9 million people a year. You
Wow.
know, so that's a huge amount. Huge number. So. Uh, and of course, I have been going through this. I keep reading about and seeing that new pollutants are being discovered every year. And it's becoming more and more difficult to treat them or to remediate. The United Nations estimates that more than 2 billion people are still without access to clean
Hey,
drinking water.
Uday, but what are these new pollutants? Can you tell us?
Oh, well, they're new pollutants, basically chemicals, and like you might have heard about PFAS, PFAS, forever chemicals.
Yes.
These were discovered, relatively recently. And then within each there's a specific chemical. So first we have to find them, and then the chemists have to figure out how to do lab analysis on them to even discover them, in
Yes.
soil or water or any medium.
Okay.
So and then the engineers, like me or my colleagues, we have to figure out how to treat them in the environment. So this is a ongoing challenge.
Okay.
uh, Okay. But Subodh, you'd be surprised to know that we have made a tremendous amount of progress in the last few decades. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Especially in the US. If I look at it, and I've been here since 1972, I've seen a lot of progress being made every decade. And I've been in this industry, so I can uh, I've got some numbers also. Uh, but when I look back and I read about the history in the US in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, uh, the pollution was a huge amount more than we are experiencing now.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so it was, you can't imagine. I think we all go back to Delhi and Jaipur during our vacations every year, and we experience, especially during November, December, January, we experience so much smog and fog related to pollution. Uh, in Los Angeles during the 40s and 50s, it was much more.
Yes.
It was worse than Beijing or New Delhi metropolitan area. People were being killed either through automobile accidents or through just diseases, caused by air pollution. Um, you'd be surprised to know that in the 60s, several rivers in the United States were on fire.
Yes.
Rivers on fire.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. They
the
were.
Cuyahoga River
Yeah.
in 1969 at near Cleveland caught on fire. There was
Yeah.
a lot of pollutants in the river, and they were very flammable. So they, you know, and it not only just the river caught on fire, but it engulfed a lot of industries that were on the banks, on either
Yeah.
bank.
Yeah.
So all of this caused a movement in the United States, and basically they said we need to do something about it.
Yes.
So what did they do to protect the environment? They promulgated regulations. They came up with an administrative infrastructure. They enforced the laws, and then the most important part was the public outreach and community awareness was there. So that
Yeah.
that helped. And I've been involved with some of these, like the Clean Water Act.
Yes.
It was passed in 1972, the same time as India passed the Water Pollution Control Act, same
Yes.
year, approximately the same. So uh, what happened was it basically was it set limits on contaminants. It basically prohibited uh, source pollution and non-point source pollution. These are like pipes going into the rivers with contaminated water, sewage, and that kind of stuff. So and non-point would be like stormwater discharges,
Right.
from agriculture or whatever,
Yeah.
so yeah, so those, and that's come a long way. In fact, when I came here and I started my first job, it was on Clean Water Act related projects. So it's now you can see the rivers in the US. They are much better. You don't hear of any fires. In
No.
fact, they're
Right.
being enforced
Yes.
so well that people can, in most places, actually can swim.
Yes.
There's still a lot of challenges left, still a lot of places left where you may not be able to do it, but it's improving a lot. you
Yes.
know so the other thing was, we go to India so often, and I cannot take the drink the water that's supplied into the homes over there by the public water supply. It just gives me all kinds of problems, so I have to go on bottled water there. But here in the US, the because the Safe Drinking Water Act that was promulgated again in the 70s, it's very safe. In fact, the water quality in that we get here at our homes in the US is much safer, much cleaner than the bottled water, most of the bottled water that we get here in the US or anywhere
Yes.
else.
Yes.
So yeah, so those are the type of things. The other thing was the Endangered Species Act. The whooping crane was on the verge of extinction during the 60s. So the U.S. passed the Endangered Species Act, and that's helped a lot of
Mm.
lot of species, animals, birds that have come back from the verge of extinction, and now they're
Yeah.
thriving. You
Okay.
Then my favorite one is the what we call CERCLA, also known as Superfund.
Yes.
Uh, so that's basically created in response to rising concerns over chemical spills and hazards from uncontrolled waste disposal sites. You may
Correct.
have heard of Love Canal on the East Coast where you
Correct.
are. No,
Yes. That would be,
it's
yeah.
yeah. So
Superfund is a
that's
big deal around here. Superfund is a
yeah,
big deal.
especially in the New Jersey area, there are more sites than almost any state, because
Yeah.
it's so industrialized.
Right.
Uh, so what the US did is they created a fund, uh, primarily funded by the chemical industry, to remediate these sites, and
Right.
they created national priority list sites.
Yeah.
Those were about 1,500 sites that were the biggest threats to the human health and the environment.
Right.
And I've been working on them since the early 80s, since when the CERCLA law was passed.
Correct.
So yeah, so in fact, and the law was actually amended in 1986 in response to
Yes.
Where the chemical release disaster happened, and so now this law requires community notification and about chemical use and releases. So it's a very important law, and we are trying to remediate contaminated soils and contaminated water and air based on these chemical releases. And then, last but not the least is something called the Resource Recovery and Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, RECRA. And that basically takes chemicals from birth, or I would say cradle to grave, and tracks them,
Mm.
makes sure that we don't
Mm.
put them into landfills.
Mm. Mm.
Uh, so uh, that's a very important one. So we don't keep making the same mistakes that we have been making over the
Mm.
last century,
Mm.
and we track these and make sure they're disposed of properly.
Yeah.
So this is for the operating industries. So basically, that's and I forgot to mention about the Clean Air Act. We
Yes.
talked about Los Angeles,
Yes.
and that has now also put in regulations over contaminants in air, and that's improved the air here quite a bit. I mean, we go to
Mm.
Jaipur and Delhi, and actually when we were going to school together in the 60s, the air was much cleaner, and
Yes.
and now
Contact.
it's much worse,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You did
So,
mention the one agency to which you are a consultant, the creation of the EPA.
oh yes, yes. So I was mentioning the basically the administrative
Mm.
setup, which is it was actually, there was an agency. I'm trying to remember what its name was. I think Public Health or something like that. In the 60s, but then under President Nixon's time, I believe the U.S.
Yes.
Environmental Protection Agency was created.
Yes.
Uh, and I've been doing work with them since the 70s,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
primarily initially the Clean Water Act related stuff, and then uh, for most of my career on hazardous waste,
Yeah.
primarily to clean up these sites, the 1,500 sites. I haven't been involved in all 1,500 of them, but probably
Yeah.
about 250 or so, and we've cleaned up many of those, and some are still going. They take a long time to do
Okay.
the
And let me also
cleanup.
mention the first Earth Day was in 1970. This
70, correct.
1970 was the first Earth Day, and Rachel Carson's book Silent Spring, 1965, was really the intellectual foundation for much of these efforts. And the Earth Day came directly as a response to Rachel Carson. And the EPA, of course, was also created. I mean, no country had an EPA, so the US was the first. to recognize its failures. And Nixon, who was hardly a type to do much about the environment, decided that it was the public opinion was far too strong, that look, we can't have this anymore. And so he created the EPA, which still stands, as you are a consultant to them. So you know very well what they do, much better than us. Okay, let's continue.
Yeah, so the EPA, it's picking up on that thread, has been doing a lot of work, not by themselves, but through contractors,
Yeah,
academicians like you,
yeah,
and other sources, uh, mostly within USA, but some outside USA also. They
yeah,
have been funding these studies, and I got involved with EPA first. Way back in the 70s, when I started working with CH2M Hill, there was a problem with in in Miami area where these coral reefs were dying,
yeah,
and they found out the cause of it. It was municipal wastewater,
yeah,
that was being uh, basically let go in, not untreated. These were secondarily treated, so they were treated to standards, but because the nutrients, they were causing a real problem with the coral reefs, and they couldn't take it. So EPA said, Miami, either you stop this discharge, or we're going to fine you every day thousands of dollars. You
yeah,
know, so they came to us, Miami-Dade Water and Sewer Authority, and asked us, and we came up with this idea of uh, we looked at several alternatives. We could have gone to advanced treatment. That
yeah,
would have cost a huge amount of money to take the
yeah,
nutrients out, the nitrogen, phosphorus.
yeah.
So we looked at another alternative, which was deep well disposal, safely disposing these secondarily treated wastewater into the uh, into the ground, several thousands, of feet below. So we kept doing the research, did some pilot studies in the field, and found out a safe zone about 3,000 feet below the surface,
Mm,
to dispose of. And we figured out a way to safely dispose of, so it doesn't contaminate the Biscayne aquifer, which is the primary source of drinking water in Miami.
right.
And so you know, we with that, I was personally involved in it. I was a project manager, and then we recommended to them that we should do it on a full scale level,
Yeah.
and then we actually did it. We were hired to do that, and eventually it became the largest deep well disposal facility in the world,
Mm,
with, I'm trying to remember, 150 million gallons a day at the time
mm,
being disposed of. This
mm,
is secondarily, and it sits there like a bubble,
yeah.
3,000 feet below, because there's just so much space to
Mm,
to take them. So yeah, and the EPA got so excited about it that they even did underground injection controls regulations,
yeah.
and based it on this project that I did.
Yeah.
Uh,
Wonderful.
and
Okay.
yeah, and fast forward to now. Now we have climate change, and one of the things that they were looking at is carbon capture and sequestration
Correct.
of carbon dioxide,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So they use the technology that we used, myself and the people I work with at CH2M Hill, for the deep well disposal of treated wastewater, uh, to do the capture and sequestration of carbon dioxide.
Mm,
And they have done several pilot scale projects. They did it actually during the turn of the century, and found that this works. The same technology works there. And so many industries, and even some countries in Europe, have started actually doing it here in
mm,
USA and in Western Europe.
mhm.
So I'm so glad that several decades later, this is still happening,
Uh,
and EPA was the impetus behind
It's
it.
it's a great landmark. But how good is the capture? Sequestration, okay, you have solved the problem. We understand. But how good is the capture? Is that also working well?
Uh, it's still in the beginning stages. It all depends on the cost. How much you have to spend money to capture it. And bring it to by pipelines or however to one central location where you can actually pump it down.
mm,
So it's smaller levels. It works. When you have a larger area, then it becomes cost prohibitive. So
yeah,
this is still, it's one of the technologies, and EPA has mentioned this as one of the technologies where industry can consider it, like that we're trying to get rid of coal-fired power plants,
mm,
and they are considering using this technology, but there are other technologies also to
yeah.
take care of it. So it's just one of the technologies in the
Okay,
mix, and it's
okay, all right.
but climate change. Talking about climate change,
Yeah.
uh, let's talk a little bit about it, and what's happening.
Mm,
And we all know that climate change is real. The debate that has been raging over the last 2-3 decades is now dwindling down. Almost all everybody, especially scientists, they are in unanimous agreement that this is real, and the greenhouse gas emissions
mm,
caused primarily by human activities
mm,
are the main cause
mm,
of this climate change. So and Asia, especially South Asia, is warming faster than the global average.
mm.
So we've heard about this in India, where this year was probably the hottest, or
Yes,
and the last year was even hotter than the previous year. So every year it's coming, they're going at record heat levels.
mm, yeah,
You know, so yeah, and also Asia remains the world's most disaster hit region, from weather and climate and water related hazards. We've seen the droughts and the heat waves and the floods and the storms in India, Pakistan, especially in South Asia.
yeah.
That's happening. And you know the global weather patterns have been changing. So so uh, we cannot really control climate change. We can
Yeah.
only manage it a little bit. You can slow it down, reduce it by reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, and we can mitigate the impact by planning ahead to build more resilient buildings, coastal storm structures, and other lifeline structures. And civil engineers are playing their part. So I just wanted to, I'm a proponent of civil engineers and environmental engineers, and also, so I will just update you on what the civil engineers are doing,
Okay,
especially in the US, but also all over the world right now.
okay, all right.
So they're
Let's,
working together.
yeah, uh, how to respond to climate change, which is, as you say, inevitable. So we have to start responding to it now. So let's hear it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, basically, the civil engineers they're trying to do this in their designs. When they design a structure or a
Mm,
facility, whether it be transportation or in water resources or coastal management or buildings and structures or energy supply, we are, adapting our designs to account for the climate of the future.
okay,
Okay, this is happening now, and so you've seen in the US, people are more aware of this. They are they're doing things individually
mm,
on their part, like being aware of the carbon footprint,
yeah,
and so they're hopefully carpooling more or bicycling, things like that, or little things, but the industries are also adapting to this. I'll give you an example. In the civil engineering industry, the
sure,
the the um, the cement industry accounts for a huge amount of emissions, greenhouse gas emissions.
yeah,
I think I've heard a number like 10% of the industrial emissions in the
yeah,
US are from the cement industry,
yes,
because it just emits a lot of greenhouse gases in the manufacture of cement. So now we need concrete. We still need concrete. We can't do away with concrete, and anyway. So we have to adapt to this. So what's an example is now the concrete, they're looking at ways of reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. So the concrete is coming up with less and less the traditional cement, and to the extent that there was this manufacturing firm now in Arizona, and I saw this only last year. They are manufacturing cement and using that in concrete uh, that has no traditional cement. Basically,
Okay.
it's all industrial waste,
Hmm.
uh, and that kind of stuff. So they're getting rid of the entire emissions there.
Okay.
So it's some, so each industry is looking at it, at how to reduce the carbon footprint industry.
Okay. All right.
and
But
then
that's
and then
not
so what
adaptation. That's not adaptation. Adaptation means, if I'm going to be flooded in 5 years, what should I do now? That's what I'm looking at. That's
yeah
still
that
mitigation. That's still reducing greenhouse gases. Do you have any ideas on how to adapt?
the adaptation is basically our planning facilities, designing facilities to account, the designing the infrastructure, or any facilities basically to take account of what's going to happen in the future. So like simple things, like in San Francisco, they are looking at, the shoreline has some structures to account for waves and the sea level rise. But now they're looking at it in terms of how do we design these to take care of the climate change related impacts, like
Yeah.
higher sea levels, higher waves, those kinds of things. So simple things like raising the berms, raising
Okay.
the structures.
Yeah.
So that's what civil engineers are doing. We
Okay.
are using building information management systems when we are designing buildings, in the buildings of the future. So those kinds of things. But the main thing is the local government also has to adapt uh, to the climate change through new standards, codes, adapting the new standards, codes, regulations, zoning laws, which govern infrastructure. And they're starting to happen at the local level. Actually, they have been happening, but it's accelerating now.
Yeah.
you know uh, so not all states are doing a lot. Some states, like in California, they're doing a lot at the county level than some other states in the US. And it's catching up even at a global level. So on a government level, like a statewide level, California is in the forefront. It's a good example and a pioneer of taking care of these climate issues at a bigger picture level. California is the largest state in the United States, and the California Climate Plan is a very good example. Okay, what's the California Climate Plan?
Yeah.
It basically reduces greenhouse gas emissions 48% below the levels in the year 1990.
Hmm.
Okay, and uh, by 48% below the 1990 levels by the year 2030, and then achieve carbon neutrality by 2045. So this is the goal.
Yeah.
Okay, and but there are measures to do that. And so the goal is to reduce by 94% reduction, I mean, reduce the petroleum use between 2022 and 2045.
Yeah.
Okay, and so there's a 86% reduction in total fossil fuel use.
Yeah.
So and the remaining 14% reduction would come from capturing carbon from air and fossil fuel plants
Hmm.
and sequestering it below ground or in forests, vegetation, and soils. So what is the biggest polluter, in California, at least, transportation.
Yeah.
Transportation is California's largest emitter of greenhouse gases.
Yes.
Yeah. So what is the state legislature recently basically said, okay, we are going to have all new cars, trucks, and buses have zero emissions. Not immediately, but they have set goals between 2029 and 2035.
Yeah.
So by 2035 in California, we will have no new cars that have the internal combustion engine.
Right.
So that's a big deal. I think some of the other states are also following behind. I mean, behind the California goal, but it's going to take a little while in the other states. But California is actually maintaining it. We have been selling more electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles than anywhere else in the U.S. especially.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I just want to add 2 points about California here. One, its
Mhm,
economy is so large that
mhm.
but if it was a country by itself, it would be in the top 10 of the GDP in the world. Okay. So when we
Yes.
talk about California, it's not a state. It is
Mm,
actually a huge economy. And number two, which Uday just mentioned, actually, when the industry produces things, they have to follow the California standards because it is the largest market. And when they follow the California standards, they sell the same stuff in the other states. So that even if the other state has not adopted the California standards, what they get is California standard stuff because the economy, the manufacturers don't want to produce one thing just for California and one thing for another state. If it's California, they make it nationwide. So it's really, California is really in the forefront in many, many ways. And as they say, what happens there today happens elsewhere next day. So it is very important that California succeed.
yes, correct. Yeah, we are leading. We are large. And the largest state, and we are leading the whole United States, perhaps in some places in the world. So
Yes.
there's actually a goal of 25% reduction in vehicle miles in 2030 compared to 2019, and that's going to be a tough one to do, but they're going, using public transportation or giving incentives for using public transportation, those kinds of things. The electrification of buildings, that's happening at a rapid pace here in California. Things like simple things like rooftop solar, or even replacing natural gas appliances with heat pump and electric
Hmm.
pump. So those kinds of things, and the electric generation in California has been mandated to be 100% zero emissions by 2045.
Yeah.
Okay, and you'd be surprised to know that we are already more than 50%, reached more than 50% of the goals.
Yeah.
So that it's happening at a very rapid pace here in California, and I'm very hopeful that it'll happen. You know, when the goals will be attained. And lastly, we've gone a long time, but lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the work I'm doing as the Secretary General of the Asian Civil Engineering Coordinating Council.
Yeah.
It's basically a body that came in response to uh, the engineers, civil engineers, trying to do their own things without doing much coordination. So everybody was working on it, but on a problem, but they didn't know what the other guys were doing. So in 1999, uh, this organization was born. Primarily, it was an effort among the Japanese, the South Koreans, the Americans, Taiwanese, and the Filipinos. They put together this organization, um, and now there are 17 countries
Yeah.
that are in the organization.
Yeah.
So, what it does is basically takes the civil engineers working on different issues
mm,
and puts them in touch with each other. They're
mm,
working together, and then they transfer knowledge from one country to the other through these organizations.
mm.
So, um, for example, last year, Indonesia, uh, which is one of the 17 countries in this organization, said came up with saying we have too many earthquakes
Yeah.
and too much damage from earthquakes in Indonesia uh, in terms of human life and property. Now, ASE, American Society of Civil Engineers, had come up with a standard which basically said if you adopt this standard uh, for on existing buildings,
Yeah.
structures,
Mm.
then you'd drastically reduce the chances of property damage and loss of human life. So, but so we were instrumental in transferring the knowledge from US to Indonesia, and now they have adopted it in Indonesia as a national standard and are going to implement it. So this is the kind of thing we are doing. We have put together technical committees in various fields like climate change, or artificial intelligence in civil
Mm.
engineering, or long span bridge structures, taking the state of the art knowledge and then making sure it doesn't stay there where the knowledge is now, and
Okay.
it goes and so that's for sustainable infrastructure,
Okay.
because the US US is leading in this area, and some other countries like Japan and Korea also. In fact, even in India is leading the area of disaster planning and management.
Mm.
So we have a technical committee led by India, which is one of the countries in this
Mm.
organization, and they're leading the technical committee on disaster planning and management for typhoons and cyclones
Okay.
prone areas
Okay.
in Asia. So that's the kind of work that we are doing in the Asian Civil Engineering Coordinating Council, um, looking at sustainable infrastructure, which
Okay.
all ties in. Basically the pollution, the climate change, all
Mm.
of this is all together, and the civil engineers are doing a big playing a big role in getting rid of pollution, in getting sustainable infrastructure developed, and in addressing climate change. So I think that's we've gone a long time, and we've basically touched on these topics, but something to think about.
Okay. Thank you so much, Uday. Let me ask you a question, uh,
Sure.
which is this, that you have had a long professional career. It's covered national, state level, and then international. And you are in India quite frequently. Okay. So,
Yes.
what tips would you have for young people in India? What's your advice?
uh, in what young people for in this
Whatever,
area or anything?
anything, it's you are a senior,
Oh,
experienced man. Let's hear what's in your heart, what's in your mind. What do you think you would tell young people in India if I'm asking on their behalf.
uh, Yeah, actually, I have gone to my alma mater, IIT Kanpur, and
Yes.
I've given a talk to them on on this subject, and basically I tell them, you know uh, do whatever you're passionate about. Don't just do it because your parents are pushing you, or you found out that there's a lot of money in it, because you may not, you may like the money, but you may not like to work there. So I think that's one of the things. The other thing is, don't be discouraged big in your early career, or even the student days, if you're not doing well. I was not a top-notch student, even though I was at IIT Kanpur, but I was not at the top, and so we were discouraged. But many of us, like me, who are not at the top, did well in life and in career. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. The other thing is, uh, and that's helped me in my career, is having a mentor or a set of mentors. You know, if you have somebody you can look to for advice,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's personal or it's career
Mm-hmm.
related, I
Mm-hmm.
think that helps. So that's another thing. um and then always be on the lookout to learn more, because it's a lifelong learning experience, whatever field you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So we know computers are always, they're change, the knowledge changes every few months or
Mm-hmm.
or so. But in civil engineering it's not quite as rapid.
Yeah.
But still, lifelong learning experience. We are looking at AI, artificial intelligence right now, but it's being applied in all areas. Civil engineering applying it. We are doing it in, we have a technical committee looking into how we can apply these in construction or other
Mm-hmm.
civil engineering projects. So just be ready to learn uh, more, and always be curious. Uh, don't just take
Mm-hmm.
what you're seeing in the books or on a TV. You got to research into it.
Okay.
So those are the kind of things that I gave them in a nutshell.
Okay, good. Any final thing you want to add here?
No, there are a lot of other challenges related to pollution and climate change and all, but one of those is plastics. And even though I still have to use plastic, in many cases I don't have a choice, but try to reduce the use of plastic. But this is an issue that's building up over the ages, over the decades, and it's a very difficult, very challenging thing to get rid of. It's causing a lot of problems. This is all related to, most of it related to climate change, but a lot of it is pollution. There's a pollution patch of several hundred miles in the Pacific Ocean right now with plastic there, and we are trying to figure out how to get rid of it, because it's killing the ecosystem
Mm-hmm.
in the Pacific Ocean, in that part of the Pacific Ocean. So
Mm-hmm.
plastics, just try to avoid use of that.
All right. Okay, good. Thank you. That it was a great pleasure to hear you and actually learn so much from you on what you have done and how the US has progressed, California, and so on. It's an excellent summary. Thank you so much. Let's say goodbye to the viewers. I'll be back
Thank
with
you.
a
Thank you, Subodh.
young person or an expert soon. Bye till then. So let's end the recording here. Okay. Bye.